Hi there everyone, Lars here with a special anime and writing analysis brought to you by Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers, because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends. And one of the more heartwarming and beautifully animated anime of this particular season has been My Blissful or Happy Marriage. Depending on the translation, I believe that you will find it under Netflix under My Happy Marriage, which is the name that I will continue to use in this particular video. This is a wonderful Cinderella retelling that is set in early imperial Japan at the turn of the 20th century, where you have this girl who, she's not being neglected by her family. Oh no, it's just downright abuse from her father to her stepmother to her half-sister. It is just awful what happens to the main character, Mio Saimori, who is not just simply used and abused, but just is outright hated to the point that her family has this devious plan to get rid of her, not just simply to marry her off, but to hopefully see her die in a gutter by marrying her off to a man, Kyoka Kudo, who is just this hard, dark, cold man who has thrown so many women out on their ears because, well, I guess he's just really hard to get along with. Whatever. And the family's like, yes, we can get rid of her, and it won't be our fault. So they get her into an engagement. They send her off to the Kudo mansion where she meets Kyoka, and you have this kind of Beauty and the Beast then scenario where you have Mio, who's obviously the underappreciated beauty, with this cold-hearted man who is the Beast, and they begin to develop a really beautiful romance. And this is such a great story because of how it takes just this horribly abused girl and transforms her into this confident, loving young woman through her very wholesome, very encouraging interactions with Kyoka and his household. And so, I highly recommend this story, both the manga and the anime. Now, when Scott and I did our anime preview for the summer season, I said that I might do an analysis video on one particular part of the story, depending on how it went. And, well, we got to it a whole lot faster in the anime than I expected. The scene where Kyoka leaves a comb for Mew. It doesn't seem like a whole lot because it's just, well, a comb. And yet it is one of the most powerful moments within the manga, and I was kind of surprised how it played out in the anime. So I'm going to do a little bit of a comparison right here. One of these moments that just really struck me, and I think there's a lot that we can learn from it. So I've already given you the basic premise for the story. Miyu is supposed to be married off to Kyoka. She goes on over to his manor. He's a cold-hearted man, and yet through their simple interactions with each other, they begin to open up and change and become better people, and their relationship blossoms into true romance. And in order for us to get there, here's a little bit more of the context. So, some things that you have to understand about certain traditions, and yes, there's a little bit of fantasy thrown on in here, so I would not call this completely historically accurate, but it was indeed that when arrangements were made between noble families in old Japan, that many times you would ship one of the members of your family off to the household of the other as a sign of good faith. This marriage will go through. Our families will be united. And so this is nothing really out of the ordinary to send Miyu on over to Kyoka and the Kudo household. Now then, when she gets there, because she's been so used and abused and neglected in in the worst way possible by her family, she obviously does not look like a high-born lady. And so Kyoka takes interest in this. He launches an investigation into her family, into the Saimori family, which is this very powerful, very well-respected noble clan. So, ooh boy. And he begins to wonder, what can I do for this girl? Now, one of the reasons why he thinks this is because he is so used, according to what the manga tells us, the anime actually does not tell us this, he is so used to women being awful. This is because he did not have a good relationship with his mother at all. And we will actually learn later on the story what happened to his sister as well. Furthermore, women were already, when he was a child, impressing themselves upon him, hoping to capitalize not only on the wealth of the Kudo family, but to get the blood of the Kudos, who have married into all these other powerful families, and not only then have a great pedigree, but also access to all kinds of magic across the different noble clans, which means that Kyoka Kudo is an incredibly powerful man. Any woman who marries him has the chance of birthing very powerful children, which would bring lots of honor, prestige, and money to her. So Kyoka feels like he's been nothing more than a slab of meat all this time. He did not get along well with his mother, and because of that, when he tried to then have relationships with women while he was at university, it never worked out because he just didn't understand. There was always friction. And so then when his family tried to set him up with other fiancées, it just never worked out. This is a man who's been beaten down again and again and again, and that's why he's just so cold-hearted. And yet, Miu is completely unlike anyone else he has ever met. And so he wants to get to know her better. He wants to find out what's wrong with her. He wants to help her out because underneath this cold exterior is a good man. It just needs to be brought out. And Miu brings that out in him because of just how refreshing she is. How she is just unlike all these other cold women. She is kind, she's caring, she's hardworking, she's self-sacrificing to a fault, and he realizes this is not okay, this is not healthy. I need to help this young woman value herself. And so that's one of the beautiful things that's happening there, and that's in this story. Now then, what I've given you is context that the anime largely skips over. So that way it can quickly get to just their very first date, which is a really fun time where they go out into the town together, they go shopping, he takes her to this ancient shop where kimonos are made, and he's going to get some nice clothes and makeup and stuff for her. While at the kimono shop, Miu is enraptured with this beautiful cherry blossom kimono, which reminds her of her mother who she greatly loved, who she lost when she was very young, and whose stuff was all destroyed by her father and stepmother, which deprived Miu of any sort of dowry or any mementos of her mother, leaving her only with just those sad, sweet memories. And this kimono is just taking her off to another time and place. Kyoka realizes this, and he wants to get her something that will make her happy. But on top of that, he's gotten a comb. A comb would be like a token of affection, something almost akin to an engagement ring if given in the proper context. Now, this is where the anime and the manga most heavily diverge, because in the manga, Kyoka gives Miu the comb fully well knowing what he's doing right here, that this can very easily be seen as a sign of, I want to marry you. This is basically an engagement ring. Now then, because he understands this, he wants to go about it in a very roundabout way. Also because he knows that because of how Miu has been raised up into this point, she might not accept the gift. And so he wants her to accept the gift, not because he's like, we're going to get married, but because he's saying, you deserve to be happy, and I want you to know that you're treasured here with me. So I'm going to give you this very important gift right here. I'm going to do it in a roundabout way, so that way there's a better chance that you will accept it, and we'll see where we go from here. And then her gratitude and just how much she lightens up when she receives this comb awakens affection within him, and he begins to realize, oh my gosh, I'm falling for this girl. And it's a very beautiful moment for these two characters, because this is such a beautiful gift for Mio, and we begin to see the beauty that is within her radiating outside as pure gratitude and joy comes out of her. And then for him to be all like, oh my gosh, women aren't all horrible individuals. Oh my gosh, I think I actually kind of like this girl. I want to do more for her. It's a fun moment in the manga. In the anime, however, it's changed around, because in the anime, it's implied that he's like, yes, we are going to be engaged, and this is the proper custom of it. However, in the anime, he is shown not so much to be so cold as he is awkward and inexperienced. And because of that, that's why he leaves the comb out for her to basically trip over when she gets into her room. So that way then she'll accept it and he doesn't have to be all awkward by presenting it to her. But he's like, oh, I hope that what will happen? Oh, and then when she comes in and expresses her gratitude, he's like all flustered because, oh, it actually worked out. The interesting thing is that despite the fact that the events in both the anime and manga basically play out the same, the way that the characters act within those events and the context to those events drastically changes how these different scenes play out. I personally feel that in the manga, it's way more impactful because Kyoka is being the cold, calculating man as he makes this decision. Yes, he's doing something good for Mio, but there's purpose behind it. It's very calculated what he's doing. In the anime, it's more like he's really flustered and he doesn't want to put himself into an awkward position or into an awkward conversation, but ultimately he gets roped into it because Mio is just so gracious for what has happened and he just can't help himself. Now, my challenge for you, dear viewer, is this. I'd like you to read the manga and also watch the anime. It's on Netflix. And tell me which version you prefer. Do you prefer the manga or do you prefer the anime when it comes to the gifting of the comb? I will say this. I prefer the manga personally because of the slow buildup. We spend so much time with Miu in her depressed state that we can see so much better how her time in the Kudo Manor and with Kyoka has begun to draw out a different woman. And by Kyoka being portrayed as a little bit more understanding in this particular situation within the manga, it's not meant to be some grandiose statement. It's him just basically being a nice guy and then suddenly realizing just how much this girl can actually mean to him and that she's changing him in a wonderful way and that he wants to know more. He wants to get to know her better. He wants to do more for her. Could this be love? He wants to find out because of her. Because of the context and because of the pacing in the manga, I feel like this romantic scene is way more powerful. In the anime, it is a sweet moment, but like I said, I feel like it comes off more flustered and embarrassed. It's this moment of two youths beginning to realize that they might have feelings for each other, rather than a calculated moment on the part of the guy. Some people will say that they like that more because it feels more genuine on the part of Kyoka, and that it then comes across as Kyoka and Miu are more equal in their relationship. But because of the pacing and the lack of context for this particular scenario, I feel like it loses a lot of the oomph that it could have had. And this might be because the animators and directors are looking more forward to some of the bigger moments within the story where it's very clear where their relationship is going and how these two show their affection and feelings for each other. So when I look at this particular situation, this scenario that we've got right here, two variations of the exact same setup within the manga and the anime, I think that what we can learn from this as novice writers is that yes, you can go through the steps. There is a formula for writing all different kinds of romances. For whatever scenario you want to set up, it has been tried before. That's why we call them tropes. Tropes have been used time and time again. There's formulas for writing a great romance. It's all there. You can research it, you can practice it, and make it work for you. But what delivers different feelings, and this is definitely where romance is subjective, is what you do with those tropes, with those formulas. How much of a certain ingredient do you add? How long do you let it stew? A formula isn't something that you necessarily have to stick 100% to. You can change things up, and depending on how you tweak certain aspects of the story, even though you're using the same formula as everyone else, you could end up having a completely different outcome and a completely different reaction from your readers. This is something to bear in mind if you decide to write a romance story, because because sure, you can follow the formula, you can follow the steps, you can use all the tropes, and you might not actually get the desired effect that you want. Romance is something that you definitely have to workshop out. It's something that you have to get feedback from beta readers, from editors, from others, in order to understand what is going on with what you are doing. Because you might think it's working out beautifully, you might think that you're going to get one thing, but ultimately it might come across another way to your audience. The same as with the manga and the anime. Some people might say that it looks and reads exactly the same to them in both formats, and if so, I again would love to hear why that is, because I see it as two completely different scenarios right here, or as two completely different outcomes. So again, this is where I definitely want to hear from you guys in the comments what you think. Meanwhile, if you are a novice author looking for more writing advice, especially for romance, I've done quite a few videos breaking down different stories and how they approach romance, because again, there's so many things you can do with it, and it is indeed very subjective. So different kinds of stories will yield different kinds of insights. So please check out our videos here, or head on over to our podcast, Camille's Harem, for more writing advice and to especially hear from the rest of the harem. And if you would like to support the work that we're doing here, a comment, a like, a subscription are always appreciated, but we would definitely love it if you checked out the books that we ourselves have published. Links for them are in the description below. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining us on this adventure that we call writing, and until the next video, y'all, tschüss.